Hi, welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Syrewicz. Are you fed up with how the justice system works? And someone's probably promised to fix it for you. The question is, what were his true intentions? And how do we assess the political independence of the judiciary? That's what we'll talk about today. While in France, a presidential frontrunner faces an electoral ban, in the US, a sitting president wins despite fraud and sexual assault allegations and convictions. Does that suggest one justice system works better than the other? Or does it mean it's politicized? And have voters grown so cynical that they consider any allegation to be motivated by partisanship? From unpunished war crimes to growing corruption, the rule of law, otherwise known as democracy's third pillar, is under immense strain. Our guest today is Senator Adam Bodnar, Poland's former ombudsman and justice minister, who played a central role in reversing the Law and Justice government's political capture of the judiciary. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for raising all those important issues.
Before we turn to Europe, we kind of are forced to start with Donald Trump and his creative, not to say instrumental, approach to the legal system and how his influence may be trickling down onto other leaders in the Western world. Do you think that he is a kind of orange canary in the coal mine and that he is heralding a new era when politicians are less constrained by legal norms, whether international or domestic?
I think that the policy of President Donald Trump is extremely important for the whole world. And I think it is yet too early to predict what will happen and what would be the consequence of his presidency. Because on the one hand, it may mean that certain rules, especially this transatlantic order based on the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is not any longer 100% valid. But on the other hand, it may mean also that other countries would decide to become stronger, more united, and more even committed to respect for the rule of law and some basic values of multilateralism. Second, we also don't know yet what could be the domestic consequence of his policies, because we see, I know a lot of people who are fighting for the rule of law, for democratic principles inside the United States. And it is not just about Minneapolis and what the ICE is doing, but it is, I would say, more general in terms of protecting prosecutors, judges, protesting against packing courts with some loyal people. So we'll see what could be the consequence, because maybe also for the United States, it may mean that their legal system is vulnerable, that they have to protect institutions. But of course, we are here, I think, more interested in the value of multilateralism and basically what policy of Trump means for our international obligations and this general perspective how politicians behave vis-à-vis the legal system.
So actually in Europe, the real canary, the real protoplast of state capture is Hungary. It's Viktor Orbán, and he's been harboring some politicians, some Polish politicians who are accused here of very serious corruption and spying on the opposition as well. And his polls are not looking good. There's an election coming. His rival, Peter Magyar, has been promising to establish much tighter relations with Poland. So what does that mean for these asylum seekers that are evading justice here?
I think that we should remember that Viktor Orbán is building his political system for the last 15 years already. So I remember, in 2011 when he started, even at that time there was this famous book by Farid Zakaria about illiberal democracies. But Orbán was the one who basically created this system and even named this system like this, using this notion of illiberalism in the center of Europe and moreover in the center of the European Union. And for all those years, he was undermining, he was putting under question some policies of the European Union, but he has been also transforming different institutions inside the country. Please look that Poland was, in fact, trying to make the same. I mean here the Law and Justice Party. Even, please remember that Jarosław Kaczyński once said that he's going to build Budapest in Warsaw. And basically, he tried to do it for 8 years. He didn't complete the picture. We had elections in 2023. Right now, we are in a completely different moment of history. But I think nobody predicted at that time that we'll face the situation then that two serious former Polish ministers, former Minister of Justice and the former Deputy Minister of Justice, are political refugees, and they got political asylum from Viktor Orbán. Moreover, if I remember position of the former Minister of Justice, Zbigniew Ziobro, towards Putin, towards Russia, towards anti-communism, it is completely...
It's absurd that they are under his protection.
That right now they are seeking the protection of Orbán, who has such a good ties with Putin these days. Today I've read that Peter Magyar is going to organize a march against regime. So quite a similar story like in Poland. Please remember that before elections in 2023, we had two marches. The first one was on the 4th of June. The second one was on the 1st October, just two weeks before elections. So it seems to me that the pattern might be similar. But the question is, of course, what would be the result of elections and whether, let's hope, victory by Peter Magyar and TISA would be so decisive for the future of Hungary. If I talk to my Hungarian friends, pro-democratic, pro-European friends, of course they would wish to have a constitutional majority, because then it would be much easier to change the legal system and to make the rule of law restoration. But it may happen that they will just get a simple majority in the parliament. And please look that the Hungarian system is very much based on so-called organic laws, and it is extremely difficult to change them. So it is not just a constitution, but also organic laws that requires qualified majority in order to be changed. So they may end up also in quite a complicated legal situation, how to restore the rule of law when they do not have enough of legal instruments to do it.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what is happening here.
Yes, but I think still, we do our best in order to change the reality, and still, a lot of things have been achieved in Poland, and but of course, I don't want to predict, what would happen in Hungary. I think we should keep our fingers crossed, not only for the victory of TISA, but also for Mr. Ziobro and Mr. Romanowski coming back to Poland using the European Union procedure, which is the European arrest warrant.
Mm-hmm. Which has been issued just recently.
Exactly, yes. So let's hope that this procedure could be applicable here. And, we have wonderful examples of cooperating with a number of countries, European Union countries, in terms of European arrest warrants. So why not this? Why this procedure should not be used also with respect to those guys who are under charges by the Polish prosecution?
I have to admit, I was under the impression that we in Eastern Europe will be conscious of the fact that the rule of law, that an accountable government are not naturally occurring phenomena, that we had to fight hard for that they're actually, historically speaking, quite exceptional. And we failed. Many of us failed. I mean, Hungary, the Law and Justice Party tried to dismantle many democratic institutions. You had the recent Czech election where a populist became prime minister. All these moves suggest that it's a very fragile situation. And from your point of view, from your experience, is it easier to build something completely from scratch or repair something that's been damaged?
I think it is one of the most important questions which comes back in doctrine, in the political sciences and legal discourse concerning this rule of law recovery, because it is quite easy to make a comparison to 1989. Because in 1989, I would say our Polish founding fathers, they were in a pretty good position because they could frame different institutions. They could say, they are needed because we have to modernize Poland, we have to join the Council of Europe, then NATO, then European Union. In order to make the economy effective, also you must make all those reforms. And basically, there was like a general agreement.
There was like a roadmap.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But there was one important element. We changed completely the system, so we are getting out of the Soviet Union influence. Second, we are in a total disaster regarding our economy. And the third, there was a moral condemnation of the previous government. So there was still the memory of the martial law. There was a memory of people emigrating to United States, to Canada, European countries. There was a memory of political killings, of torture by the Polish police at that time. So it was much easier to create this kind of a common understanding that we need to reform the whole country. And look at 2023. We have parliamentary elections. Those elections are won by the pro-democratic, pro-European coalition. But some people may say, okay, but we are still in the EU. Economy is pretty okay. Level of unemployment is not that high. And there is this like a growing polarization in the society concerning how to assess reforms. So basically you have a pretty significant part of the population which didn't see any bigger problem. They were not so much concerned with institutions, with the Constitutional Court, with judiciary, with prosecution. They were more interested, let's say, in their social welfare situation, which was much better than it was in 2015. So, and upon this background, it is much more difficult to make reforms. Moreover, you have people that were promoted to different institutions, and you cannot just make like the total vetting of everybody who is serving in the prosecution, judiciary, who are civil servants, even in some other institutions. You must transform them, but basically using those resources, those possibilities, also those human resources that are at your disposal in this moment of transformation. So it is a complicated process, but I think what we do not appreciate is patience. If I compare the situation right now in 2026 to the situation in the beginning of 2024, it is a different Poland already. So there were not that many changes of legislation concerning different institutional issues, but still, it is, in my opinion, a different country already, thanks to different measures that have been installed in the public life.
Speaking actually of other more established democracies, in Italy, there's going to be an upcoming referendum on judicial reform, which its detractors are saying that it will make the judicial system more vulnerable to political pressure. Its proponents say it will make the system more fair and effective. And also, if you look at what's been happening in France, for example, in the last couple of years, you had two major trials, one of former President Nicolas Sarkozy, the other one of presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. And there's been a lot of opinions concerning these trials as being politicized, especially on the part of actually Trump and Orbán, saying that they're left-wing vendettas. But do you think that these systems in Italy and France, in those well-established democracies, are actually functioning? They're not politicized, or they have holes and grey areas?
I would ask a question. Okay, let's imagine that such legal systems like France is a politicized system. So then we may ask a question. Okay, so then, which country on earth is having a system that would not be politicized? If that kind of countries would be put under the question, do we have any other standard setter? I don't know, Norway, Sweden maybe Denmark?
Why not?
I wouldn't say so. I think that it is a well-established system, and I think those trials were going in a proper way. But those trials of both Sarkozy and Marine Le Pen, they show one interesting thing to all of us here, especially in Poland. Because quite often in Poland we hear the story that why the process of accountability takes so long. You know, why those guys are not yet in prison. That is basically the message I hear quite often. Because in order to fulfill all basic requirements of the fair trial and due process, it must take a time. So it is no wonder that Sarkozy was using all different measures in order to postpone, to use different forms of appeal, and it took so many years for French court to penalize him. But at the end of the day, he served his penalty. I think he's still serving, having this electronic bracelet. I think the same is with Marine Le Pen. It shows that if you are a politician, you could be accountable if you are misusing public funds. In this situation, the European Parliament funds, she was employing some assistants using
fictitious,
exactly. Although they were performing like a purely political functions, not connected at all with the European Parliament. But in my opinion, it is rather about like a great courage of judges that, even despite the pressure, despite like the expectation that they would not go against, they are still able to deliver on justice in those cases. Of course, in case of Le Pen, we have still to wait for the judgment of the court of the second instance. But I think what is quite interesting, and I'm really grateful that you have mentioned this Italy case, because Italy, they are having referendum on the constitutional change concerning some changes concerning relationship between the statutes of prosecutors and the judges. So they are basically in the Italian system treated together as so-called magistrates. And there is like the general argument that those professions should be separated.
Yeah.
Okay, and basically, and there are also some other consequences, especially how creation like the new national councils of prosecutors and the national council of judges, and that those national councils should be elected by lot and not by selection of the best people, so by some election by peers, by other judges or prosecutors. And and it's quite interesting because on surface it looks pretty neutral. It looks like a reform that should basically go in order to really reform the judiciary. But I think the Polish example shows that we should think twice. Okay, but so what is the reason why at all that kind of a reform is made? And if you read commentaries by judicial associations, by legal scholars from Italy, they start to ask a question, okay, is it really about separation or is it just a pretext to maybe achieve something more? And then, we come back to this issue of illiberalism and those tendencies by some politicians that maybe by using different mechanisms, they would like to have more influence on judiciary, and they are using some superficially neutral arguments in order to justify some of the reforms, but at the end of the day, they would like to increase the executive power of a judiciary, claiming that maybe judiciary is too much left-wing, that maybe judiciary is not understanding like the contemporary challenges for the democracy and for the operation of the state. So it is quite a dangerous phenomenon because it seems that a certain playbook could be repeated in some other countries. So once again, using some norms that could look superficially as being neutral, and maybe even beneficial to the general public, but the end result could be the political influence on the judiciary.
Our conversation has been focusing very much on domestic legal systems, and we live in times where we definitely need some form of international court system, and this is precisely the time when these kinds of institutions have been losing a lot of their credibility or political support in general. Even if you think of the Epstein affair, the way it's spreading now and how we see that this is something that needs to be prosecuted in various places. What do we do in a situation when everybody seems to be undermining these institutions? or at least treating them as something quite obsolete, not really needed anymore?
For me, Epstein affair is, on the one hand, of course, about this massive sexual assault and abuse, and for sure, you know, it should be of interest of different domestic legal orders, because without, you know, domestic prosecutors, you cannot achieve like the specific effect. And it seems that Polish prosecution started its work by creating like the special team to deal with this case, but it seems that UK is also going forward with a very strong decision concerning one of the members of the royal family. But please look that there is like one interesting component of the Epstein affair, which is the name Torbjörn Jagland, former Secretary General of the Council of Europe. You know, he's one of the guys who was like in a very close contact with Epstein. He was kind of an intermediary between Epstein and his people and Lavrov and Putin. And he was the head of the biggest European organization dealing with democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Okay, former Prime Minister of Norway. So if this affair shows that kind of a people may get into trap or into some strange relationship with people like Epstein, and moreover, if you look into this correspondence, it is not just, you know, one email. There is like a series of emails showing for a very close contact. And even already at that time when it was already after Bolotnoya Square protests in Russia, after killing Natalia Estemirova and Anna Politkovskaya. So nobody had any doubts, you know, what Russia was already.
I mean, we didn't have any doubts,
exactly.
But I think
but
Germany had doubts, and everybody else pretty much did.
Yeah, but he was the head of the organization that should be especially concerned about any situations like this. Okay, so please look that it shows a lot for the Council of Europe, you know. So what Council of Europe is going to do with it? Of course, his immunity has been already lifted, so Norwegians may start their prosecution. But in general, I would start to think, you know, okay, but what is like the bigger consequence for some maybe vetting procedures or for some internal security of the Council of Europe? But looking into other organizations, I think what is especially at stake right now is the question of international accountability for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So please look that ICC, International Criminal Court in The Hague, has been under attack mostly by American administration for last 2 years. So we have those executive orders against some people, judges affiliated with the court. But interestingly, also Russia is attacking the court. So our Polish judge, our former president of the ICC, Piotr Hofmański, is also under some indictment issued by Putin. So you know, so we are living in that kind of a world. So what does it mean for the world? It means that especially important task for Europe. In my opinion, shaping proper and effective methods of international accountability should be these days part of the European identity. And I use the notion European identity for purpose because we should take care about those courts. We should say that they will always exist here, that here in Europe, because of Nuremberg, because of the historical past, we cannot agree that any perpetrator would go unpunished. And moreover, we should continue to support, as it is, the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression concerning Russian aggression against Ukraine. I think it is extremely important these days that if you cannot count on the United States or on other big empires in this effort, at least you should do whatever it is possible using multilateralism in order to strengthen those institutions.
Senator, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be here.
And thank you for staying with us. We return next week.